What do you think as far as game plan in this game for the 49ers defensively? Because you've got no weapons except for McBride, really. But the 49ers have not been able to put any pressure on the quarterback. And I'll tell you what I fear, Chase, is I fear the next month, that all of a sudden we're going to have all these discussions about, Jacoby Brissett's better than you think. Bryce Young is on the up and up. Dylan Gabriel's small, but man, this guy's accurate. Oh, Cam Ward, give him time, because all quarterbacks, if you don't pressure them, are going to be pretty decent. We saw that with Stroud. He wasn't rolling at all in that game, and all of a sudden, by the second half, he looked like he had cured whatever ailed him. So, what do you think Robert Saleh's game plan is going to be? Blitz 55% last week. It's the most the Niners have blitzed in a decade. They got 16 pressures on Stafford and 1 sack, but then he carved him up and they scored. They could have scored 50 if they wanted to. What do you think the plan is this week against this offense?
Well, I'm going to keep bringing it up, and some people are going to be weird and say, you just keep bringing this up for clicks, that the Niners didn't make a trade at the NFL trade deadline. No, it's because from a game planning standpoint and an execution standpoint on defense, when you don't have a pass rush, this continues to be a storyline week in and week out. And when you don't have a pass rush and you can't get after the quarterback with 4, what do? You have to blitz. And if you don't get home with the blitz, what happens? It is unfair to your secondary and your back 7 because it's a numbers game that doesn't work to your advantage. And so what happened against the Rams last week? The Niners blitzed a lot, to your point. They couldn't get to Matthew Stafford. He had all day to drop back, tie his shoes, eat a sandwich, go through his progressions, look at the very few Rams fans in the stands at Levi's Stadium and say, look what I'm about to do. Threw for 4 touchdowns, no picks. When the blitz doesn't get home, you leave your back end to get exposed. What happened against the Rams when the Niners finally went up against a really legitimate offense and really legitimate quarterback? They got shredded. And it didn't help that the back end didn't play well, but moving forward, this is why I wanted the Niners to make a trade for a pass rusher or 2, because I knew that there were multiple bodies short. And don't tell me that one player can't make the difference. When you see what Jalen Phillips did against the Eagles, 8 pressures, 7 hurries, a TFL, a fumble forced, a fumble recovery, a pass rush win rate of nearly 20%. That's the type of impact that an individual player can have. If Bryce Huff, as the best pass rusher, can take over in a game against Atlanta, imagine what he can do if he got some more help. But the Niners didn't make a move. And you might say, well, they traded for Keon White. They signed Cleveland Furr off the street. That was before the Mykel Williams injury. And so I've seen some prominent people who cover the Niners saying it wasn't a pass rush issue. It was a back 7 issue. You're really going to look at defensive football like that? If you can't get to the quarterback, what do you expect from your back end, especially when you don't have a good safety tandem? They're going to get cooked and fried and filleted just like the Niners did, and they got pantsed on defense. That's why a pass rush is so important. And oh yeah, when you make a trade for a defensive end, that defensive end also gives you run-stopping ability. What could the Niners not do? Stop the run. So as far as the game plan for the Niners goes, Robert Saleh is going to have to blitz because they don't have the personnel to get after the quarterback with 4. But you run the risk of being exposed on the back end if you can't get home with either 4 or blitzing because you don't have the same numbers on the back end. So Saleh's going to continue to blitz. He's going to run twists and stunts. He's going to have sim pressures. He's going to have disguises. He's going to tease blitz and back off. He's going to show blitz and blitz. But we'll see if it works. And that's really the game plan here. Now, the Cardinals do like to run the football. Obviously, James Conner dislocated his ankle in that Week 3 game against the Niners. They have DeMarcado. Trey Benson's been banged up. But Jacoby Brissett's a better pocket quarterback than Kyler Murray. And so I think the pass game actually gets better. Now, that might be neutralized because they're thin at wide receiver because of injuries. No Zay Jones, no Marvin Harrison. But Trey McBride is a phenomenal tight end, one of the top 3 to 5 tight ends in football. And the Niners have not been able to cover tight ends all season long after the Fred Warner injury. And so Your guess is as good as mine as far as what Robert Saleh's game plan is going to be. You just hope that day on Sunday will be a good game as far as getting after the quarterback with that front four. What you have working to your advantage is that Brissett is not mobile. But if you can't get to him, he's good enough and he's been in this league long enough to carve you up if you can't get after him.
If the Niners had offered their third-round pick, Miami would have sent Phillips to the Niners because their third-round pick is higher than the Eagles. But you are talking about an injury-prone player who is headed towards free agency.
For sure. I'm just talking about an impact that an individual player can have. Yeah. People told me that one player couldn't make a difference. Then I looked at what Jalen Phillips did, and I know he's playing along a really good team, but he's also still a really good player. And I would have hit pause on trading for a Jalen Phillips because of the torn Achilles in 2023, torn ACL in 2024. But here's the thing that separates Howie Roseman, Larry. He traded a third to get Jalen Phillips. If he leaves in free agency, they get a third-round compensatory pick back for him. So that's kind of a wash. So that's the type of move that I think would have been savvy and helped out this team in the thick of a playoff hunt while not really sacrificing too much of your draft capital moving ahead.
Well, and somebody made the point, and I think it's a pretty good point, that the Purdy return this weekend, it's going to go one of two ways, right? He's going to look really bad, and there's going to be like, what the hell? Why did you sit Mac Jones, who was rolling, down for Brock Purdy, who's struggling in the midst of, especially in a division game, a conference game, and a game that you have to have? And when I say you have to have it, the numbers, if the Niners win this game, their playoff odds jump to 83%. If they lose this game, they drop to 56%. I mean, it's not a must-win game by any stretch, but to say that this is a nothing game, this gives a very big game for the 49ers. But, like, if Purdy comes out and he looks bad, people are going to be like, Mac Jones, why the hell did you pull Mac Jones, who completed 85% and 69% the last 2 weeks, for a guy who needed more rest? And then if by chance, Purdy comes out and just absolutely dominates and puts up 350 yards and throws for 4 touchdowns, immediately it's going to be like, well, why the hell did you guys not get any help on your defense? Because now you got your starting quarterback back and you look like you got a championship caliber offense, but your defense is so decimated that it takes you out of the equation. I mean, so I kind of feel like, I actually think Purdy's going to maybe struggle. I'm not really sure because the Cardinals are so bad, but I think the Niners could, if the Niners can run the ball and be dominant in the run game, I think this could be a one-sided game and people are like, hey, Purdy's back, one-sided game, Niners win. But if this game's close, I could see the Cardinal D-line beating the Niner O-line, Purdy being under pressure, having to run around.
Yeah.
And maybe losing this game or having it be very, very close. And people asking, what the heck? Why did you bring Purdy back if he wasn't ready to roll? So I think they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't. If they come out and he's awesome, immediately the question is going to be like, well, you got no help for your defense, so there's limits on what you can do this year.
Yeah, and you make a good point there. It's the Cardinals' defensive line against this Niners' offensive line, and I'm just racking my brain thinking about every game that the Niners' offensive line has played against a legitimate defensive line and what the result has been. Week 1 against Seattle, Brock Purdy was getting pressured a lot back there, and him getting flushed out of the pocket is what led to the turf toe injury. Week 3 against Arizona, Mac Jones was getting hit a lot against the Cardinals in that Week 3 matchup. Week 4 against the Jags, Niners turned it over 4 times because that defense was swarming. Against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Niners' offensive line really struggled. The first matchup against the Rams, Mac Jones had to get carried off the field at one point because he was throwing up on himself. Another time, his pants were down past his ass because he was getting hit back there in the pocket. You think about the Houston game. Mac Jones was getting beaten and battered back there. You think about what happened last week against the Rams. The Rams defensive line was able to bottle up this Niners run game, which has obviously been a problem all year. And Mac Jones was getting pressured once again. And so this Cardinals defensive line, it's one of the more underrated units in football. And the addition of Walter Nolan, who you and I really liked in the pre-draft process and really liked for the Niners to take at number 11, That's a player who gives them an interior pass rush. And the interior of this Niners offensive line has really struggled all year. When the Niners tackles have gone up against upper echelon edge rushers and defensive ends this season, Colton McKivitz especially, he's really struggled. And so if there's something that the Cardinals can hang their hats on to beat the Niners and to get to Brock Purdy, who might not be as mobile as he usually is because he's banged up with this turf toe and might not be moving around to the same level, it's their defensive line and their pass rush. So that's a concern, especially in a close game.
No doubt. No doubt. Bleacher Report had an article out this week. Who's your second half breakout player? And they had one for every team. And for Arizona, it's Walter Nolan. And for Atlanta, it was Jalen Walker. And those were the two guys.
You and I liked them both.
I mean, those were the guys I wanted. Jalen Walker, last 3 games, 11 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, a batted down pass, and 2 forced fumbles. Walter Nolan, 2 games, 1 sack, 2 TFLs, 2 hits on the quarterback. Jalen Walker was a total difference maker at Georgia. And it's hilarious in the draft process. It's like you get all these people that are like NFL fans that aren't really college fans, or they're draft fans, and they're like sitting there lecturing you about why Mikael Williams is so much better than Jalen Walker. And it's like, bro, do you watch Georgia football? Because if you watch Georgia football, you would have saw Jalen Walker as like a dominant, awesome, once in a lifetime kind of player. And Mikael Williams played in a rotation, and he was just like another athletic guy on a line full of athletic guys. I mean, nothing really stood out that much other than his body. He's got a great body for the game, but Walker was so clearly better. And the Niners had their chance at both, looking for a defensive impact guy, and chose Mikael over Walker. And I get the feeling that either the 49ers, they just don't quite see it. The people that are like, they were smart not to trade a 3rd round pick for, Jalen Phillips or whomever. Okay, but you know what? They've run 9 drafts and they've already had 10 busts in the 3rd round alone. I mean, I could name them for you if you want me to name them, and I could, but it's like, so you're going to tell me that team that's been presiding over a regime that's presided over 9 drafts and has had 10 misses in the 3rd round, but you can't trade a 3rd round pick for a known commodity? That's the part where I'm like, let's not pretend that you're hitting on these picks. You're missing on these picks in huge number. 10 misses in 9 drafts. I mean, the Niners have missed, if you want to go through it, in the first 3 rounds, there's 18 misses for the 49ers in the first 3 rounds of the last 9 drafts. Guys, I'm no math, I'm not anybody's capologist, but that's averaging 2 misses per day 1 and day 2 of the last 9 drafts. You're averaging 2 misses and 1 hit in the last 9 drafts. That more so than quarterback injuries, more people are banging their head against the wall about the injury factor and how to overcome it. And I'm sure that's a factor, but the bigger factor is 18 misses in 9 drafts in the first 3 rounds I like John Lynch, and I don't want to park my car at the corner of John Lynch has got to go and whatever, but you cover the Niners and the Eagles. You see maybe the best GM up close in Roseman. Should the Niners kick John upstairs to a president's role and go get kind of more of they had a scout in Trent Baalke. It's not like the scouts pick him right every time. He took AJ Jenkins in the first round and just made a lot of misses, but he also drafted DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead. And if you look at Baalke's last 5 or 6 drafts and then go look at Lynch's drafts, I mean, you could make an argument that Baalke was better. What do you think? What should the Niners, because to me, nobody ever talks about it because everybody likes John Lynch. He's everybody's friend, and he's a good face of the franchise. And he's Shanahan. Shanahan ain't going anywhere, and he's his handpicked guy, and they're working together. But 18 misses in 9 drafts in the first 3 rounds is unacceptable, can't happen. And if you said to me that is number 1, number 2, and number 3 reason that they haven't won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I just wonder, I think John Lynch has done a solid job. You look at that 2023 Niners team, it's probably one of the most talented teams in the history of the NFL that has not won a Super Bowl. But there have been a lot of misses, and I wonder what Kyle Shanahan, with how elite he is, would be able to do with a Howie Roseman type of general manager who has been able to put together such a great team for Nick Sirianni. And then Nick Sirianni has done a tremendous job of building a culture and developing these players with a high-level coaching staff, and it's resulted in the Eagles being such a great team of late. And one thing that I don't really understand with the Niners is how they put an emphasis and prefer defensive ends who are like hulkingly big, right? But they're not twitchy and they don't have bend in an era where a lot of the best edge rushers in the game are those types of guys. Now, you might look at Myles Garrett and say, well, Chase, he's really big. He's also twitchy, explosive, fast, and has great bend. You look at some of these other edge rushers, they have really good bend and explosiveness. But the Niners like these guys like Mykel Williams, who isn't explosive, doesn't really have a lot of pass rush moves, is a good edge setter, and he's really good at stopping the run. But would you call him a twitchy player? No. But then you look at a guy like Bryce Huff, who's shorter, who has good bend, who can turn the corner, and you look at how productive he's been on this Niners team. I almost wish that the Niners would change their philosophy with the types of edge rushers that they really like to prefer. I know they like to play physical, and I know that they like to beat you up, but I also like guys who can get after the quarterback. And when you draft the likes of Solomon Thomas and Mykel Williams and Eric Armstead, there were better players, I think, that the Niners could have taken in those drafts, which could have impacted San Francisco. And Jim Tomsula's ghost on Twitter doesn't have a large following by any means, but, you know, due to the algorithm, this one thread popped up on my Twitter the other day, and he looked at the Niners' last 5 drafts, 2021 to 2025. And he actually tagged you in this tweet, Larry. The Niners have selected 42 players. He crunched the numbers, and the verdict is exactly what you'd expect. 0 star players, 5 above replacement level starters, and a whopping 26 bus or fringe NFL bodies. And so I can just run through this quickly, right? 2021 draft, Trey Lance bust. Aaron Banks replacement level. Trey Sermon bust. Ambry Thomas bust. Jalen Moore below replacement. I disagree with that because he's actually a pretty good player. Diamador Lenore above replacement. I think he's one of the more underrated corners in the game. Talanoa Hufanga replacement level. He was an all-pro. Elijah Mitchell replacement level. 2022 draft. Drake Jackson bust. His practice window just opened by Washington, so I'm excited for him. Ty Davis Price bust. Danny Gray bust. Spencer Burford below replacement. Nick Zakelj nothing. Kalia Davis replacement level. Tariq Castro Fields no longer on the team. Brock Purdy above replacement. I mean, he's been one of the more efficient quarterbacks in the game. 2023 draft. Jair Brown. He's been awful outside of his first year. Jake Moody bust. Cam Latu bust. Darrell Luter Jr., Robert Beal, D. Winters replacement level. Ronnie Bell, Jalen Graham bust. Now, obviously, bust for late rounders. It's a little bit harsh, but we can chalk some of these up as misses, right? 2024 draft. Ricky Pearsall above replacement. We'll see. Renardo Green above replacement. I think that he can be a good player. Malik Mustafa lined up one-on-one against Devontae Adams along the goal line. What are we doing, Robert Saleh? Isaac Guerrero bust. Jacob Cowing bust. Jarrett Kingston bust. Tatum Bethune replacement level. He's got 3 straight games of 10-plus tackles. 2025 draft. Obviously, it's really early. Mykel Williams, we'll see. Alfred Collins, some good things. Nick Martin, can't even see the field. Upton Stout, we'll see. I think that he can be a good player. CJ West, a healthy scratch a couple of games. Jordan Watkins, no idea. Jordan James, can't see the field. Marquise Siegel, started, benched. Curtis Rourke, Connor Colby, we'll see. So regardless of whether you agree or disagree with how that tweet frames and identifies some of these players, here's the point. There are a lot of misses that have put the Niners in a position with where they are right now, where the roster is top heavy and they're lacking depth pieces, which is why the organization had to reset a little bit. Now, what's the answer? Do you fire John Lynch? Do you demote him? Do you move him to a different position? I don't think it's to that point yet. I think you give him one more draft. But if this 2024 and 2025 draft doesn't yield good results, and there are some misses in 2026, then I think you look at making a change at general manager where you try to get that next Howie, team him up with Kyle, and see what that GM can do with Kyle. The other thing, too, I think Adam Peters gets a pass because he's handsome. I think he's done a horrible job with Washington. That roster is the oldest team in football. They're injured, and they don't have a lot of good players, and a lot of his moves have not worked out, except for Jaden Daniels. So I think Adam Peters, his seat isn't hot, but I think the temperature is getting ratcheted up a little bit. And that was Lynch's right-hand man.
Yeah, I mean, it's, there's so many different ways to look at these things. And my whole thing is I want to be fair. But, when I was in the Canadian League, I used to do the production chart, and we lived by this, Chase. Lived by it. Whoever made the most tackles was first in line at practice. Whoever made the second most tackles was second in line at practice. Whoever made the third most tackles was third. I worked with the linebacker coach. So we were very much about production. You were the best if you were the best. You were the best if you produced the most. And if you didn't produce the most, then you didn't line up as the best. And the coach was really adamant about that. He was like, this is the culture. We want them to compete to be the first in line at practice. And the only way to give them, you don't give that away. You have to do it with pure production. And there's no ambiguity about it. You either did or you didn't. You either do or you don't.
Yeah.
And, I know that sounds kind of cold, but the best personnel people are kind of cold. And let me just say this. Look at the Niners' last two number one picks. Mikael Williams, he has 1 sack. Ricky Pearsall, he has no touchdowns. What's the scorecard?
Can't stay healthy either.
What's the scorecard? That's the scorecard. What are they doing for you? That's what they're doing for you. The first round pick this year has 1 sack. The first round pick last year has no touchdowns. So, and these are the bounce back drafts after the disaster drafts on the 3 previous years. So, and this is the top pick in your bounce back drafts have no touchdowns and 1 sack.
Yep.
So, we can talk about all this other stuff, and we can Ricky this and Ricky that, and he got shot and he got this, and Mikael's great against the run. He's great here. He's great there. 1 sack, no touchdowns. That's what you have to show for your last 2 number 1 picks. And that ain't good enough.
They haven't hit on a first round pick since Ayuk.
Right. I mean, it's just,
that was in 2020.
You can't, and it's just, it's at a point where Kyle Shanahan, the general manager, and whoever is running the Niners draft, and I think Lynch is presiding over it, but I don't know that he's necessarily making every pick. It's a process, and they have an internal process, and they're leaning on their scouts and their coaches and their analytics people and Kyle and their word of mouth and their, connections around the league and all their intel. But, the results aren't there. And to me, Kyle Shanahan is a good enough coach to win a Super Bowl. And by now he should have done it already. And they've mismanaged the personnel to such a degree that it hasn't happened. They've gotten close, but their mismanagement of the draft has cost them that margin. That margin is the difference between success and failure. And right now, I would just want to, I'm not saying fire anybody, but I would definitely want to take a look at my process and maybe streamline it a little bit and see the other thing I think is worth doing. I mean, I know everybody thinks they're the master of the universe. Kyle Shanahan thinks he knows more football than God. John Lynch is a Hall of Famer. He thinks he knows more football than God. I mean, everybody thinks they know the most. It's just it's the nature of the business. Howie Roseman thinks he's moving, mountains, and Sirianni thinks he knows all. All these guys think they know everything. So it's not like, everybody's got a big ego. Everybody thinks they know it all. But take a step back and take a look at who's done really well. And what did they do? John Dorsey showed up as a draft consultant in Kansas City. Who showed up after that? Patrick Mahomes. John Dorsey then was hired as a draft consultant in Detroit. Guess who showed up there? Jahmyr Gibbs and a lot of good fucking players. So maybe it's worth taking some of the gobs and millions of dollars that you have in this entity, this unbelievable industry that's just burgeoning, and take some of that money and give $500,000 to John Dorsey and have him be a consultant, a draft consultant. And if you're really good at what you do, then you should be very confident in your process and your people, and put another pro in the room who doesn't have your culture or your mindset, because after a while, everybody knows everybody knows how to suck up to the power teat. And you know what? A buddy of mine worked for the Raiders for years and years. And Al Davis said to one of his guys in the war room one year, "Hey, what do you think? Should we go with this guy or that guy? What do you want?" And the guy looked at him and he said, "Al, I want what you want." That's what happens when you have too many guys who know what's going on in the room and you know who's in charge. People just start aligning their opinion to keep their position. I better align with Shanahan. I better align with John, because if I don't, then I won't be here. So then all of a sudden you've got groupthink, and that's not what you need. You need strong, independent personnel evaluation, ideas, thoughts, and you need to fight it out. Those war rooms can't be hunky-dory. I remember when the Eagles took Milton Williams, and Tom Donahoe, the former general manager of the Buffalo Bills, was in that room, and he was hacked off. He wanted another guy. And do you remember who he wanted? It was somebody who became totally average.
Yeah.
And Howie said, "No, we're going Milton Williams."
Yeah.
And Milton Williams was a freaky, twitchy, law-tech athlete who probably didn't have the same pedigree or production, but he had an NFL body. And sure enough, he got a nice big contract from the Patriots because he's, sacked the quarterbacks 300 pounds. He moves really, really well. He emerged after teaching. Same thing with Jordan Davis. A lot of people are ripping Howie. Jordan Davis. Really? He said, "I'm going to take this big mound of clay and I'm going to mold him." Have you noticed that we haven't heard a lot of complaining about Jordan Davis recently?
Yeah.
Why? Because he's upped his game. His physicality is now playing at this level because his motor, his hand uses, his technique, everything is worlds better. So sometimes you got to coach up. Sometimes you got to go with the raw product that needs to be kind of molded and coached and polished. And if you've got a great coaching staff, you turn those guys into great players. But there's going to be arguments and everything. I kind of feel like there's a little bit of hunky-dory. Everybody's, kind of understands what they want, but who's challenging the opinions at the top? Do they have people saying, "Hey, Kyle, we shouldn't trade up for CJ Beathard, Dante Pettis, Jalen Hurd"? I mean, look at Joe Williams. How many impulsive trade ups has Kyle authored since the 2017 draft?
Isaac Guerendo last year.
Isaac Guerendo. I mean, these guys that can't play dead. Kyle's great at play calling, play sequencing. Let him do that. Get the guy who's a genius at personnel and let him do that. And I don't think the 49ers are quite there yet.
Yeah, and this got me thinking. When Andy Reid first started as the head coach of the Eagles, he worked in partnership with Joe Banner and the scouting department, and he was the coach of the football team. The Eagles made it to 4 straight NFC championship games. When Andy Reid started to have personnel say, that's when that Eagles era and that dynasty went downhill.
Same with Green Bay and Holmgren. When Holmgren got personnel say in Green Bay, gone.
Yep.
Same in New England.
Belichick.
Once Cesario left and Belichick had personnel control, gone.
They couldn't draft the fucking offensive player to save their life. And now you look at Andy Reid, right? He's with Kansas City. He's the head coach. He's with Brett Veach. Brett Veach runs the front office. Andy Reid is the coach. I just think that when you're the coach of the football team, it doesn't really do you any favors if you also have personnel say, because realistically, you just don't have the time to scout players to the level that you need to scout them. They're playing during your season in the college ranks, right? You can't just go to the NFL Combine, look at some tape and say, "I like that guy."
I mean, you could be a smart math guy,
yeah.
But if I'm taking Calculus 3 and you're just a smart math guy, and I'm taking the whole semester, and you roll in November and say, "I'm just going to cram in the last 3 weeks," odds are I'm going to get a better grade than you.
Yep. Dan Campbell right now, like Brad Holmes has done a great job of building that team. Dan Campbell is the coach. I know Niner fans don't like Nick Sirianni. The guy has the second highest winning percentage since the merger after John Madden. Howie Roseman has said this. I will build the team, and then to a point, I will say, it is your car to drive. He doesn't have personnel say. It's a collaborative approach. Obviously, he's going to share his insight for what players he likes, what players he doesn't. And the Niners and Eagles really put a big emphasis on their culture and getting cultural fits. But Howie Roseman is running that front office. And within that front office, there is a collaborative approach where Howie has all of the scouts on day 3 of the draft. At the start of the draft, they all pick one player who they all like, and Howie goes to each person and he says, who's your favorite guy still on the board? And everybody names the favorite player that they have on the board. And Howie gets challenged a little bit. I don't know, to your point, if John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are getting challenged, because who are the guys in the front office who are challenging them? I don't know if there is anybody, and I don't know if they have that collaborative approach. I think it's a Lynch and Shanahan-led regime, and I think they need some more high-level scouts and experience, maybe former general managers, to kind of help them in that department.